Hello Year 6, welcome to our next reading session. So we are going to be looking at the next chapter of Wonder, which is called Nice Mrs. Garcia. And we're going to be looking at understanding an author's intended meaning with their vocabulary choices. So we're going to look especially at a few words that the authors use and try and work out what they want us to know from that and what they think from that. So to do that, let's go into our screen. Not our screen, my screen. You're on your screen. Let's stop talking about screens and in we go. Okay, so as I just said, we are looking at the author's intended meaning with vocabulary choices. So, a couple of things, questions for you to write down as we're reading. So as I'm reading the text, we're just reading one chapter, so it's not overly long. And when you hear the answer for one of these questions, I want you to pause it and write the answer. Okay, so 3 questions. Number 1. What is Oggy's mum called? I think we've already covered that, so you might know that already. Number 2, can you find a phrase that shows that Mrs. Garcia is shocked by Oggy's appearance? Okay, so Oggy's going to meet a character called Mrs. Garcia. Can you find a phrase? So in your books, you'd write something like that. The phrase shows that Mrs. Garcia is shocked. And then final question to do as I'm reading is, what else do you think Mrs. Garcia is going to say about her grandson before she stops herself? So there's a bit in the text where she starts talking about her grandson, but then stops herself. What was she going to say? Okay, 3 questions there for you to be thinking about as I read the text. Okay, and then we're going to go back to something else as part of it. Here we go. Nice Mrs. Garcia. Before getting to that, I should quickly say what happened, what we're up to in the story. So he's gone to school and he's meeting Mr. Tushman, but it's before the school starts, there's no children around, and he's been told that he's going to have a tour of the school, and he's heading into the school. Nice Mrs. Garcia. We followed Mr. Tushman down a few hallways. There weren't a lot of people around, and the few people who were there didn't seem to notice me at all, though they may have been just because they didn't see me. I sort of hid behind Mum as I walked. I know that sounds kind of babyish of me, but I wasn't feeling very brave right then. We ended up in a small room with the words Office of Middle School Director on the door. Inside there was a nice desk with a nice seeming lady sitting behind it. This is Mrs. Garcia, said Mr. Tushman, and the lady smiled at Mum and took off her glasses and got up out of her chair. My mother shook her hand and said, Isabel Pullman, nice to meet you. And this is August, Mr. Tushman said. Mum kind of stepped to the side a bit so I would move forward. Then that thing happened that I've seen a million times before. When I looked up at her, Mrs. Garcia's eyes dropped for a second. It was so fast, no one else would have noticed, since the rest of her face stayed exactly the same. She was smiling a really shiny smile. Such a pleasure to meet you, August, she said, holding out her hand for me to shake. Hi, I said quietly, giving her my hand, but I didn't want to look at her face, so I kept staring at her glasses, which hung from a chain around her neck. Wow, that's a firm grip, said Mrs. Garcia. Her hand was really warm. The kid's got a killer handshake, Mr. Tushman agreed, and everyone laughed above my head. You can call me Mrs. G, Mrs. Garcia said. I think she was talking to me, but I was looking at all the stuff on her desk now. That's what everyone calls me, Mrs. G. I forgot my combination. Mrs. G, I need a late pass. Mrs. G, I want to change my elective. Quick pause. So elective is just like the subjects that you choose to take. Mrs. G is actually the one who runs the place, said Mr. Tushman, which again made all the grown-ups laugh. I'm here every morning by 7:30. Mrs. Garcia continued, still looking at me while I was staring at her brown sandals with small purple flowers on the buckles. So if you ever need anything, August, I'm the one to ask, and you can ask me anything. Okay, I mumbled. Oh, look at that cute baby, Mum said, pointing to one of the photographs on Mrs. Garcia's bulletin board. Is he yours? Oh, no, goodness, said Mrs. Garcia, smiling a big smile. Now that was totally different from her shiny smile. You've just made my day. He's my grandson. What a cutie, said Mum, shaking her head. How old? In that picture, he was 5 months, I think, but he's big now, almost 8 years old. Wow, said Mum, nodding and smiling. Well, he is absolutely beautiful. "Thank you," said Mrs. Garcia, nodding like she was about to say something else about her grandson. But then all of a sudden her smile got a little bit smaller. "We're all going to take good care of August," she said to Mum, and I saw her give Mum's hand a little squeeze. I looked at Mum's face, and that's when I realised that she was just as nervous as I was. I guess I liked Mrs. Garcia when she wasn't wearing a shiny smile. And that is the end of the chapter. So hopefully you've managed to answer those 3 questions that are down there. What is Oggy's mum called? Can you find a phrase that shows that Mrs. Garcia is shocked by Oggy's appearance? And what else do you think Mrs. G is going to say about her grandson before she stops herself? Okay, so hopefully you've answered those. Now, we've still got another couple of questions that I want you to look at, but for this you can do kind of once I've stopped talking. So the questions are, and I've got to put the text on below for this bit, we're looking at this phrase, shiny smile. So what does the phrase, a really shiny smile, imply about Mrs. Garcia's smile and feelings? Why does Oggy say that he's kind of, it's a shiny smile? What does he mean? What might it be masking? And what I mean by that is, what might it be kind of like trying to hide? Why do you think Oggy doesn't like her shiny smile? And then the final one is, does this mean that Mrs. Garcia is not a nice person? Okay, so 4 questions for you that I want you to answer. So you'll say something like, the shiny smile shows that Mrs. Garcia is actually thinking, tell me what it says. She's probably hiding, tell me what your answer is. Oggy doesn't like her shiny smile because, tell me your answer. And then, I think that Mrs. Garcia is a nice person still, and then tell me why. Or, I don't think Mrs. Garcia is a nice person because. Okay? So those are the questions that I want you to have a go at doing year 6. Obviously pause this video in the bits that you need to with the text in the right places. I'd love to be able to give you the whole text, but I can't. I'd love you to have the book at home, but we can't do that either. So give it a good go, and I look forward to seeing your answers on Dojo. Goodbye, year 6.